Crowds of hungry customers stand and stare as 4-year-old Jack runs over to his mom. Tears are streaming down his face, and he hysterically sobs into his mom's arms. Susan, Jack's mom, comforts her son. "What's the matter?" Susan frantically asks. But Jack can't speak. He just sobs, sounding like he's in pain. But then Susan sees it. There's something on his leg. Earlier in the day, New Year's Day to be exact, Susan and Jack decided to spend the sunny day at the park, followed by some food at Jack's favorite restaurant, BurgerKing. Locking the front door, Susan turns to Jack. "You ready?" she asks, and she holds his hand. Together they walk off, not knowing what was in store for them. Arriving at the park, with the piercing sun shimmering down on the mother and son duo, Jack runs towards a roundabout and begs his mom to spin him. She does, and Jack's excited giggle echoes throughout the play area. Susan's phone starts ringing, and she answers it, while Jack gets off the roundabout and makes his way to the slides. Suddenly, Susan hears a scream. It's Jack. Susan turns around to find Jack had fallen over and grazed his hand. "Oh no," says Susan as she comforts her son. "Can we get food now?" Jack asks in between sobs. "Sure thing," Susan replies, and they set off to their local BurgerKing restaurant about 10 minutes away. Little did Susan know she should have gone somewhere else for food. Arriving at BurgerKing, Susan and Jack walk into the restaurant to find a handful of people spread out over the polished green tables. Susan notices a group of teenagers in the corner. They're listening to music while sipping on their drinks. Two of the teenagers suddenly look at Susan and her son and snigger. What was their problem? After what seemed like forever, Susan was finally at the front of the queue. She orders their food and tells Jack to go wait at the table in the corner. Jack walks off and sits by himself at the table while watching a YouTube video on Susan's phone. But then suddenly, a piercing scream can be heard. The group of teenagers that were sat in the corner of the room had started a fight. The teenagers yell at each other, and Susan walks over to Jack and comforts him, trying to distract him with the YouTube video. Members of staff eventually break up the fight and kick them out. But two teenage boys were still sitting at the table. The smell of burger and fries linger in the air as Susan and Jack tuck into their well-deserved lunch. Jack was eating a kid's meal while his mom nibbled on a Whopper and a few fries. All of a sudden, Jack looks at his mom with a serious yet innocent look. "I need the toilet," he whispers. As he finishes the last bite of his burger, Jack wipes his hands and gets up to go to the toilet. When he walks over, he notices the lock is shut. There must be someone in there, he thought. He looks back at his mom, who gives him a smile. Suddenly he hears something. It's coming from inside the toilet. Giggling and laughter could be heard as Jack waits outside the bathroom at BurgerKing. After around 10 minutes, the door opens and the two teenage boys who had gone in before Jack emerge, smirking. Susan watches as the boys walk past Jack and signals him to go in. "I'll be right here," she says as she watches Jack shut the bathroom door. "Mom!" Jack screams as he runs out of the bathroom, tears streaming down his face. Susan shoots up from her seat, her bag falling onto the floor. The sound of your child screaming is a sound no parent wants to hear. Jack runs into his mom's arms. In the bathroom, he says, sobbing, "Go look quick." Kissing Jack's forehead, Susan makes her way over to the bathroom. Walking inside the bathroom, the smell of antiseptic and bleach lingers in the air. There's nothing in here, she thinks to herself, eyes scanning for something that would explain her son's outburst. A few toilet rolls were rolled out on the floor, and the tap was dripping. But then she sees it. The reason for Jack's tears. From a distance, it seemed a white sticky substance covered the toilet seat, but as Susan got closer, she realized it was glue. Super glue, in fact, smothered all over the toilet seat. Somebody had done this on purpose. Susan bursts out of the bathroom, her heart pounding, and calls out to the manager and staff. Susan goes over to Jack, who was still sobbing and in pain. She checks him and sees that his skin was raw on the back of his legs. Sobbing into his mother's arms, Jack was terrified, and Susan was furious. "We need help." Susan calls out to the crowd, holding back tears. For James, the assistant manager at BurgerKing, he thought he had seen it all. From petty arguments over Whoppers to disruptive behavior by teenagers. He was used to diffusing tense situations and always knew what to do when trouble arose. But in his 15-year career in the hospitality industry, he had never seen anything like this. James and his staff gather around Jack and provide medical assistance. They help clean the wound and bandage him up while Jack sobs into his mom's chest. Susan then decided to go to the hospital and calls a family member to come with them. But this wasn't enough for Susan. She knew there was only one thing she could do. Posting to her personal Facebook in hopes to bring the pranksters to justice, she wrote, "To the two young boys that thought it would be hilarious to put super glue on the disabled and baby-changing toilet in BurgerKing. I just want you to know that I'm still having to console my 4-year-old son Jack, who was unfortunate enough to use the toilet after your little prank." Susan hoped that the two teenage boys would be found and punished. Jack didn't deserve this. After a brief investigation, thankfully the two boys were found and were subsequently interviewed by police. The two boys immediately apologized to Susan and Jack and admitted they regretted doing it. It was a prank gone wrong, one of them told her. But was this enough for Susan and Jack, who, for the 4-year-old, would have to live his life with this terrible memory etched in his mind? Hearing the news that the police had subsequently taken appropriate action against the boys, Susan lets out a sigh of relief. It had been a few weeks since the incident, and the events of that day still plagued her mind. She watches as her son plays with his toy cars. Finally, some justice, she thinks while clutching a cup of coffee. She takes a sip before smiling to herself and watches as her brave little boy carries on playing. Wow, what a story! This story just goes to show that although pranks can be a fun way to trick your friends, they can also result in some pretty severe consequences. Hopefully, Susan and Jack's story will remind pranksters to think twice about the people they could be upsetting, all for the sake of a laugh.